Hi, everybody. Welcome to our discussion for January 16th of 2022. Pirates Break is over, and we're discussing 8.62, all about Trey, which was something. So we're going to do a quick 10-minute first lightning round first impression. So make it sweet, make it succinct. Tell me what you want to say. I don't particularly have an impression right away, so anybody else want to volunteer? Mr. Europe, volunteer.
Yeah, I loved it. This has been such a long time coming with Amaris, and even with Trey has been there for a long time by now. And in my opinion, even though it was just a taste of what we're gonna get, uh, what you call it, fulfilled my expectations. I was perfectly happy with what we got.
Cool. Mr. Wiggles?
It was a interesting foray into writing about like a heist-like structure. Basically, it was the whole setup and planning phase of the heist that I saw this chapter, and I'm really interested to see where it's going to go the next few chapters.
Cool. Action Kermit?
Okay, yeah. So first of all, I want to say that the action, the suspense of that chapter was just really well done. It was clear that Pirate did their research on doing that. Watching Ocean's 11 was a good inspiration. And Trey did a good job of trying to keep things bloodless, but just couldn't deal with it. And in the end, because the Olsenoi had to be boringly competent of all things. Jeez. This is about to go sideways in a major way after Ghazi comes into it. So there's going to be a lot of action next chapter. Looking forward to it.
So Edge Dancer had to say, impression. Further divergence from the quote-unquote typical TWI chapter. Also got to hear from Pirate they haven't read some of what I consider classic modern heist plot lines. What do you consider classic modern heist plot lines, Edge Dancer? I'll give you a little bit to write it up. And in the meantime, Descanter, you have something to say.
Yeah. So while he's writing that up, I'll just say, I thought it was really entertaining. I think that I am so invested in Mini Z's progression and how she does. So that's probably the top thing. I thought it was interesting that it's a heist chapter with someone who's decent at planning and is accomplished, but neither of them are actually very good at it, as opposed to a lot of your classic heist things where you have this team of crack experts in their various fields and they're doing things. This feels like, if I were to try to plan a heist from start, this is kind of how it would go.
Okay. We have a couple people typing it up a storm, and in the meantime, I'm going to ask a question to the group. So Pirates spent some time watching Ocean's 11, and they were very open about it. And they did solicit some classical examples of both movie and written examples of not just heist genre, but the caper genre is what I like to call it. So what do you consider the height of classical caper genre books? Not or movies or comic books, something that epitomizes to you the best of what that genre represents. And as an addendum to that, what is the kind of tension or feeling or emotion that most makes you identify or enjoy that kind of work? Kylera responded, Mistborn, Six of Crows. Those are newer fantasy heist novels, not the height. This was an answer to the previous questions. Okay, got it. Edge Dancer said, modern heist plot lines, IMO, including Mistborn, first book, The Lies of Locke Lamora, Artemis Fowl, the first book, and Descanter, who's Charles Varick.
Charles Varick was an old Walter Matthau movie, which is
Oh,
in
it's
the
an
genre.
actual movie. Sorry,
It's
it's a
an
movie
actual movie. It is an actual movie titled Charles Varick.
noir type, or when was it done? Can you give us a little precise of it?
Um, I can't remember, but it was fairly old. It may have been before I was born. Um, it so it's not fantasy at all. It's a planning movie of Charles Varick, of Walter Matthau trying to outwit the mob in when they're coming after him for accidentally stealing all of their money in a small bank robbery.
Cool. There's Action Kermit says the Prestige was super clever. Also, Catch Me If You Can was outstanding. Really?
Yeah, so The Prestige is a story. It's about 19th century or so, stage magician who's trying to solve someone's disappearance. And they went into, the theory of how you would apply magic tricks and things. And that was, interesting to me because I studied magic tricks a lot when I was in high school. Catch Me If You Can was also good because it was based on a true story. That con artist was like a real guy, and I also like that one because of the tie-ins to the FBI stuff, and he eventually did end up joining the force, in order to stop other con artists like that. But there was just a lot of really clever notions that went into how he would pass as an airline pilot or something like that, figuring it out by trial and error when he was that young.
All right. So, Alabaster notes, it's not a heist if you don't get got. It's a quote from something, I don't know it. Basically, at some point, the plan needs to fail is what I would say is the most essential piece of the plot. Someone agreed with him. Edge Dancer agreed with him. In response, Edge Dancer says, to me, this is very true, but also essentially saying there must be conflict in the book. Mr. Europe responds, Rule 1 of all heists is that if you lay out the plan, something has to go wrong. Plans only get to go well if the audience doesn't know the entire plan. To answer my own question before I end this and move on, for me, the height of emotional connection to this kind of caper slash heist stuff is the the kind of banter that happens between people and the fun in it. I enjoy that fun con artisty vibe. I watched a lot of shows. I watched this particular show called Leverage, and there's also a very British version of it that came before it. But I watched Leverage, and Leverage is all about Robin Hood type group run by a mastermind slash really good guy who they would steal from the rich to give back to the poor kind of deal. And in it, there is a particular character played by a woman actress that I really love, named Sophie Devereaux, and she is considered the greatest con artist in the world. It's exaggerated, clearly, but every episode where she takes the lead, it's this fun kind of everyone plays a different character. They mix emotions, play on each other's abilities, and that kind of clever mental play between it. It's never been the action that drew me to it. No explosions, no Mission Impossible style getting lifted above the what do you call it, the trap floor, slowly trying to make your way across the complex series of traps and whatnot to get to whatever the thing is. It was never that. It was just always that emotional aspect. Anyway, moving on, unless someone has a final comment, you can ping me. Okay, we're getting some commentary from a few people, so I'll wait. All right, I got nothing, so I'm gonna pause and just move on. So we're gonna get diving into the topics and questions in the Google Doc. Before I get started, does anyone have anything to add or anything super serious that they want? You can go into the Google Doc right now. The link's in the event tag and in the announcement. You can go ahead and post questions, and we'll get to them. Okay, so the first question I want to start with, as the author notes state, this is likely to be a 3-chapter arc. As we saw last chapter, there is a 1-month time skip for the Deadlands as well. Do you think this arc is 3 chapters long because the conclusion will have Trey and company ending up in Rame, putting them at present day, or will the Amaris breakout be significantly more complex than expected, even with Ghazi involved? I think the summation for the chapter is, where's the timeline for all this landing? I think I got that. I'm not quite sure what the significance of the timeline is, except I think for the first time in a while, Pirate has chosen to invest in this particular storyline and just take the time they need to write it. Timing, I mean, they could spend 6 chapters and only have 3 days pass. So, timing-wise, I don't think it has any particular connection. Does anyone disagree or agree? I'm gonna start calling on people at some point. You know that, right? Mr. Europe?
Personally, I believe that there's a chance that this ends up in Rame, but I don't. I'm one of the people who believe that we're not going to catch up to the Deadlands time this volume, and I don't like. It could be like an epilogue to the Trey chapter, to the final one where they arrive in Rame, but I don't think the story is going to continue from there, so to speak. And I don't think that all the other arcs are going to catch up to the present day, so to speak. So
Okay.
maybe, but it's not going to be a particularly relevant thing if that's the case.
Mystery
Wiggles, you want to say something?
So I was the one who wrote that question. Mostly, it's mostly because I was wondering like how this could be expanded to a 3-chapter arc rather than a 2-chapter arc if all we're doing next chapter is basically getting Amiris out. Like, if Ghazi is there and she has all this information that Trey and Kalik have found already, and they have all that info, what is going to take 2 whole chapters to get through to get Amiris free? So that's why I was thinking that the most likely scenario in my mind is that it's going to immediately be connected back into modern day Floss and Rhyme to try and get Floss in a better situation for the end of the volume, rather than have him go into next volume still being under siege and still being super crispy bacon.
Okay. I don't particularly see okay, how do I say this? The graduation of a heist story and the way it's generally structured. I think the reason Pirate has chosen 3 chapters is because they wanted that feeling of the heist, but they need to still make it all happen the way Pirate wants it to happen. So my expectation that remains, first chapter is the heightened heist type attempt. Second chapter is the real attempt, and because Pirate tends to do 3s, the third one is the one where they actually succeed, which will be the 3rd chapter. And then the consequences therein, because they like to do denouements and properly wrap up the storyline so that it blends back into the major stories for everybody else. Considering how they've been highlighting the Earthers, my expectation is that they'll be somehow involved in whatever the breakout is. I've got some commentary from folks who don't want to speak. So Ed Jansen says, I think 1 month after after last check. Okay, I'm going to start it. I think 1 month after last check-in with Flos will leave King good dental hygiene on the last legs. Raim's final redoubt being stormed with Emerus and Ghazi swooping back in to save their king. I'm not saying it will pick up there for sure, but it would be a time skip to the good stuff, so it's a definite possibility. Thaddy the Savior says, I could see that part of the issue is the Earthers that want to leave and what to do with them. Ashok says, surely one chapter for Breakout and one chapter for Aftermath doesn't seem that unreasonable. Mr. Europe says, actually, I do believe it might end with Amaris showing off and saving Rem to show how the heist was worth it. Not sure it takes a whole month and catches up to the Deadlands, though. We're gonna wrap up that question now. Let's see, what else is there? What did people ask that's actually interesting? Alright, here's a question, a very straight up one. Will Ghazi alone be enough of an addition to the breakout party to make it successful, or will they try and loop more people in? I'm gonna go with yes as my answer, and that's where I'm leaving it.
There's a question of how they would incentivize those people. Like, I mean, so the Uznoi people, the illusionist, centaur, lizard person, like, seems like my read was he understood that this was probably getting Trey's fault, but I don't see Trey just walking up to him and being like, "Hey, you want to help us break Amary's out?" Like, I don't like you can. So I don't see how they would get other people involved in a reasonable manner, without like providing a good amount of detail on what they're trying to do.
That was Evan, and we have Rosie who wants to say something.
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is that I really think we actually will see Just Ghazi and Just Ghazi go all out because we've kind of had this pattern recently of seeing some of that. We just saw Mars go all out and fighting, an entire army by themselves. So it makes sense to see Ghazi as the scout do something quasi-scout like breaking someone out of a prison and, murder a shit ton of people. But the other thing is, I actually kind of agree with Yoshi. I think it might be that somehow this fails. I don't know if that means they catch Ghazi. I don't know if that means Ghazi gets wounded. But I think they might end up using the Earthers or somehow recruiting the Earthers to help out with this because we're going to see Ghazi go out and it's not either going to fully work out or work out the way we expect it to.
Okay. We have Ashok saying, Ghazi used to have the Infiltrator class, which consolidated into War Scout. I think she would be a great specialized class for the jailbreak. Mr. Wiggles asks, you say yes, but who do you think they'll loop in? That was for me. And my personal feeling is if Ghazi's even half as brilliant as, or sorry, not necessarily brilliant, but just as effective as she is shown to be, her first move will be to start bribing the various factions to fuck with each other and then produce a point of contention, distract them, and then they'll do it. Ultimately, Amaris's jailing is pretty divisive. Publicly, they're holding together, but nobody's really interested in keeping her there so much. Not the smart ones, anyway. Mr. Europe had more commentary, but before you do that, Ed Genesis says if they were truly willing to go in on the Earthers, Trey could bargain for their freedom. Go ahead, Mr. Europe.
Yeah, I thought as what's her name, Kara's friend said, the conversation with her about Earthers wanting to leave could be foreshadowing that it might allow, like, they might rope in several Earthers to go with them. to then send them away to Tarandri or Israel or whatever. But I don't know how many would be willing to actually murder a bunch of mages, as Ghazi is probably aiming to do. But yeah, I also agree with Rosie that it's about time we see Ghazi going all out and showing off her powers. Since the time she's fixed her eye or got her eye fixed, we only saw one small little fight scene in Actelios, and since then she's been off screen or sitting on the ocean floor. And I think it's about time she actually does something big and gets the spotlight on her.
Mr. Wiggles, you have a response?
So this is a response to what you just said, Mr. Europe. But I do think it's kind of a mistake to think that the plan they had originally come up with wasn't going to involve Ghazi in any way. Like they were planning on having Ghazi come in right now anyways, but they kind of screwed up in how they uh, alerted the security already. But Ghazi was always going to be coming in. So I don't think necessarily that it's going to be a bloodbath now. And I think what was planned before, like using Elena as a distraction, it's still going to be part of the plan, and I don't think they're necessarily going to try and kill all these mages just because Ghazi is now involved, because that was always the plan to begin with.
Cool. Let's move on, I guess. That's a lot of discussion over this. Okay, well, I guess this leads into the next question. Do you think Ghazi's inclusion in the plan will result in a bloodbath? Or will she opt for a quieter, more non-violent approach? If bloodbath, who do you think is dying? Will Amaris try to raise Wistrom or kill mages as well upon release? I hope so, because then there'll be some reason for me to care about all of this. And we got a bunch of people typing, so I'll let them type. Oh, Kel says, lol. Can't believe you made me say that out loud. Lol! Amaris and Ghazi without a bloodbath seems unlikely. Descanter on bloodbaths, then Rosie.
So I had a couple of thoughts on bloodbaths. I thought my thought process was that I don't think Ghazi is going to try for a bloodbath, whether or not it happens that way. My worry is more that Amaris is going to be cranky enough to blow everything up. I think that their smarter plan is to get out, because if they go out with a bloodbath but don't take out enough of Wistrom, then the entirety of Wistrom will want to actively go to war with them, as opposed to kind of stand off and possibly take pot shots and kidnap an archmage who happens to be there. But I think Amaris had a little bit. They're treating Amaris a little bit like some of the more sympathetic people are treating the Jinn. I felt like they're feel a little bad about keeping her there, but fret a lot about going, well, if we let her go now, she's going to kill us all. So what do we do? And I think they might be right.
Rosie?
That's a really interesting point that I didn't think about, and that part of the reason factions may want to actually help is that they may be interested in helping, but yeah, they have that realization that if they just let Amaris go, she's going to raise Wistrom. And they kind of need like a Ghazi Trey situation in order to wrangle her and get her out. But I disagree in that I think Ghazi will absolutely bloodbath, because I literally just rereading volume 1, we saw Ghazi murder a group of gnolls just randomly. Like she takes no prisoners. If you're in the way, you're dead. And so I really think that we're gonna see a lot of deaths. I personally believe Viltok is gonna die because Trey needs some trauma from this. And what better than the nice old mage guy who literally can't really defend himself because he's kind of a loser. Uh so really, yeah, I think there is going to be a bloodbath, but I think it's going to stop at Trey dragging Amorous away so that she doesn't raise Wistrom to the ground and cause the exact situation you have, which is, getting Wistrom now against Rain again.
So we're gonna roll right through some commentary. Evan says neither Amorous nor Ghazi are opposed to killing, but I don't see them going out of their way to do so. It's too dangerous to stay, so escape will be their first priority. Ashok says Amorous might be worried about being recaptured, so might just flee because of that. Kel reminds us Flos hates Wistrom anyway, and Wistrom hates Flos, so they may decide to do all the damage they can while they're in a good position for it. Staddy asks, does anyone else think that Trey will be talking Amorous out of murdering everyone? No. And Evan says, I don't think Amorous is strong enough to raise Wistrom by herself. And we'll let Mr. Wiggles say his piece, and then we'll wrap that up.
So just a kind of a response to Rosie and the whole bloodbath thing is that although Ghazi obviously has some issues with, just murdering whoever is in her way, I don't think this particular situation will make her want to do a bloodbath. Like, she has to know, or she'll be informed by Trey, that Rhyme is in a very bad situation right now, and engaging in a lot of combat and trying to, do this the forcible way is really dangerous in the middle of Wistrom. So I feel like even if she's more predisposed to going on a rampage, she will know that that's probably not the best plan here, and will try and do this more non-violently, I guess, even though it might not be possible at this point with how Trey screwed up.
All right. On that note, I'm going to ask two questions at the same time. What do you believe Amorous' real class is? And why is Gali not an Archmage? Do you think he could be if he wanted? I wanted to ask those two questions together because, and as a mark to the first question of what do you believe Amorous' real class is? Relevant quote: "You're doing it again. It makes sense for me to have a school of magic, doesn't it? I don't call myself a lightning mage, so I am not one. I do like lightning. Every intelligent mage tells me it's foolish to be an elementalist at my level." Unquote. Um, the the reason I'm asking the two questions together is classes are always a reflection of the person that is retaining them, right? So if whatever the class is that Archmage Amorous was able to achieve, keep that in mind when you're talking about the particular Mage of Gali as well. He didn't choose to become an Archmage or to take that particular path. His path is apolitical, a conflict, like he just avoids conflict in general. He knows he's looking for consensus, and in general isn't really interested in the kind of things that would lead you to power your way to being at the top of the pile. I mean, we have the example of the Terry and his simulacrum, Eldavan, rolling their way through Wistrom, so to show you the difference between him and what the others is. So let me just wrap those questions up, and then I'll get to some responses. 1 second. So we have Edge Dancer says, Mage of War. No. Okay. Kel says Gali being the head of Ulsanoi is to remind folks. Of what exactly, Kel?
That's who that is.
Okay. You're saying that Gali is like a placeholder? Someone just there to give a point of
No,
reference?
just to remind folks that that's who Galley is.
Calais is Ulsanoi. That's okay. Maybe I'm just being slow. Sorry. If other people understand, my apologies. I was just trying to figure out what the hell that means. Ashok says, I was surprised at how academic Emma seemed in her conversation with Trey. I thought she would be all about combat. Wouldn't be at all surprised if she has some secondary class. Whitebeard Forever has some comments.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hey, so I don't know about her mage class, but it is possible that she has gotten the prisoner class in the time that she's been locked up. And that would mean that she might have gotten some sort of skill that lets her have one good escape attempt.
That's an interesting idea. Maybe she has gained a new class. Who knows? Stady the Savior says it would be some upgrade of her Battle Mage, right? Maybe something like Peerless Battle Mage of Lightning. I could definitely see it being Peerless, though. Okay, and Mr. Wiggles, go on.
In relation to the Gallet question, I do think he would definitely rank among the Archmages if he wanted to. But I think Ulsanoi just doesn't work that way. Like, they like being in the shadows rather than being at the forefront of the political game. So I think he would definitely rank among the Archmages if he wanted to, but he doesn't want to.
Okay. And Evan asks a question. Have we seen mages try to kill each other before in Wistrom? Will the golems break it up if they think people are actually in danger of death? Terry explicitly was not trying to kill people, and the regular duels aren't to the death. We've never seen Wistrom in conflict. Not at that level, no. I think the closest we did get was Terry's challenge to the Archmages. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's about where we are. I think Wistrom is explicitly a no-kill zone. At least not openly a kill zone. Go ahead, Rosie.
I'm just wondering if I want to say I'd have to reread the part that people tried to kill Pisces and originally, like right after it happened, and they figured out it was him before the trial, and they weren't able to because of the golems, but I'm not entirely sure, A, if I'm imagining that, and B, if that did happen, how much of that was the golems and how much of that was Cognita.
Yeah, I remember it as being Cognita explicitly preventing the death of Pisces, not necessarily them breaking any particular rules. I could be wrong, but that seems to be the general feeling I got from that particular passage. Okay, excuse me. Okay. We're gonna see what the next question is. A lot of questions about like heist aspects, but here's a more philosophical one. So Flosis 7 all seem to have made some kind of grand pact with Flos over a promise that they wanted fulfilled. Do you have any theories for what the other 7 happened to want from the wondrous Flos? Now, I believe, to recap, we know that the Foxkin dude, Tottenvale, wanted a protection and safety for his people and the ability to complete his projects and to alter the world in some way. Ghazi wanted an end to slavery. Uh, I, I'm not sure what Orthonon wanted, but we haven't gotten much of anything else from anyone else. So, Ashok says, I would love it if Amorous asked Flos to break past the golems into the upper floors of Wistrom. Okay, that's a possibility. Anyone else got any theories? All right, wrapping that one up. All right, there's just like a bunch of questions about the particulars of the heist itself.
Rosie wanted to speak.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rosie. I missed your opinion.
Yeah, sorry, I was typing. I think I'm trying to think of all the 7, but Mars, I feel like, was probably just wanting to fight. I feel like Mars was just wanting to have the most glorious battles and a glorious end somehow. Especially given her fighting the armies and being like, I've been here before. It really feels like that was what she wanted, and maybe a little bit of a Ginny's wish in some ways. I can't really think of the others right now because I had thoughts and then I've been typing.
Okay. Just come back to us when you have more thoughts if you want. Just ping and we'll speak again. Evan, you had something to say.
I kind of disagree with that read on Mars because you hear a lot about how she's hidden beneath all these layers and like the real person isn't someone we really know. We only had that, the only time we've been in Mars's head was that one sort of battle where she kind of pitied all these people. I think she definitely wants to, and actually, even the times I remember thinking about glorious battles, like Floss talking about how Mars was kind of looking for an Elder Keeler or whatever to see if they would fight. It's not her talking about that. I think Mars probably has some. I'm really curious about whatever it is that Mars is hiding underneath everything, why she's so kind of feels this need to project this illusion, but I suspect whatever promise Floss has made to her is about that, because that seems to be her kind of underlying motivation for everything. And I just don't think we have enough. I don't think we have enough information to really understand it now. I don't read Mars as like a berserker like Sali, the kind of revenant, the battle revenant. I don't see her as just a mindless brute. I see her as someone who we don't have a good read on yet, but who has this very big flaw that we, or very big personality trait that we haven't explored enough yet.
While folks are typing to speak more on this, okay. Can people claim the questions that regarding the heist itself, the particulars of how the heist will happen? We've got a question about what plans will have to change with the up security, what was the note that was handed off to the half-starfish drowned woman, and what's the distraction that Elena was likely asked to do, which involving the camera when she was given the camera and a letter, and Trey was hinting to Elena about gathering the Earthers who want to leave. What is, like, I think the general feeling I'm getting from all of these questions, unless someone claims it, I'm just going to wrap them together at one. How does this, what's happened in the chapter, change the nature of this heist? How are they getting out? How does this change what will happen with the Earthers? What do you think was going to happen with the Earthers? And was anybody interested in what the fuck Tinker Tailor Spy Man, Mr. Noble, was doing? Mr. Europe, you're up.
Yeah, just regarding the camera thing, I just saw that question. This all takes place before Eldiven goes to Tarandria with everyone. We haven't reached that point in the Wistrom or in the heist arc, so to speak. So she hasn't given the camera. Trey hasn't given the camera yet to him. Just to clarify.
Okay. So, one of the specific questions, Kylera, you asked was, do you think there are heist elements that were included in this chapter that we missed? What could they be? Could you give us a hint of what you're talking about or what's going on?
Yeah, so a lot of heists are kind of run like magic tricks, right? They lay everything on the table and then something possibly goes wrong, but the first answer is never the right one. You have all of the pieces typically, but it's normally the second or third thing, so it's obvious in retrospect, but not the first time around. So I would guess that there's probably some things that we're seeing that haven't been used yet that are pieces that will come into play.
Okay. We're gonna get to what Mr. Wiggles has to say in response to that, but before that, Whitebeard Forever comments, think Mars has dwarven blood and she doesn't like how that makes her look? It has been said that she is much shorter than her illusion. An Action Permit comments about the poor seagull. Go on, Kermit.
Yes. So, first of all, F in the chat for that poor seagull that gave its life for the cause. But there is another question that raises in my mind is whether the Corrosive Gamina is actually helping at this operation without Trey's knowledge. So we saw that particular, young lady who was feeding the seagull was, chugging mana potions the way the Karas was in order to raise her mana affinity. And also, if she was feeding seagulls at the time, she would have had, a direct line of sight into Trey and Karak, or Kalak, I forget which way you say his name is, dropping Mini Z down there. So she would have seen what they were doing. And after the explosion happened, that character, acted fast to provide an alibi in order to take the suspicion off of them. So it sounds to me a lot like, someone with a more experience in subterfuge, running interference and doing cover for them.
Yep. I have a thing about that, but Mr. Wiggles, why don't you go ahead, and then we're gonna wrap up with 2 final questions.
So back to the heist elements that were included in this chapter that we might have missed and all that. I do think, the whole distraction attempt, part of that was the letter that Kalak put under the half-drowned woman's door. I think that, plus the Earthers and, the letter we saw last chapter that Trey gave to Elena, I think both of those are aspects of the heist that will come into play next chapter. And mostly they'll be to distract everyone. Probably like, it didn't seem like a lethal kind of thing. Like Trey specifically mentioned that Wister mages would probably have to like put it down somehow, but they don't do things lethally. So maybe some kind of riot to get out. Like we know that Elena wants to leave, and so maybe they'll try to have them leave with the drowned folk contingent, and Wisham obviously just won't allow that.
Okay. I'm gonna get to this because Edge Dancer's been waiting the whole time. So there was a question specifically asked, is chess a solved game? I'm assuming this was Edge Dancer. And he has a very specific opinion on this. I will try to replicate his emotional state. Chess is not a solved game. Period. We haven't proved even the weak case of solving the game. We don't know from the beginning of the game what the optimal strategy is. There is still development to be made, and even on the developments to be made to chess bots, to my understanding, admittedly flawed, the current approach is something along the lines of playing a lot of games and using those as feedback to what is probably the best strategy based on the games of high-level play so far. Just because we suspect that something is the correct path is not remotely close to proving such a path is the proper one. I understand, and it's completely in character for Floats to be like, I don't like this game, which a golem could beat me at every time. But it's not a solved game, Trey, the fictional character. And that wraps up Ed Chancer's opinions on chess. Ashok agrees that it is not a solved game, but AI is better than all human players already, so in that sense, golems could always beat humans. Okay, that completes that. Ashok asked an interesting question. Anyone else think Gali definitely knows that Trey was behind the balcony attempt, but he chose not to say anything, and we had 4 responses to that going yes. Add a 5th one from me. And I'll wrap that one up very quickly by saying I had an argument with this in the middle of stream, and everybody was like, there's no way he knows. He suspects. He can't possibly know. Fuck you, people. Galley's entire shtick and the Ilsenoi's entire shtick is information gathering and watching the other factions. They stay ahead by being ahead. You can't remain in a safe position considering the kind of things that they are involved in without being one step ahead of the normal factions. If nothing else, they watch their movements, the particular important people, which means if there wasn't someone tracking Trey's movements, or at least watching the entrance of the prison, I will eat a fucking point of the Ilsenoi is to be information kings. They've explicitly done this before where they know what's going on, but they don't make any plays unless it threatens their position or the foundational position, and they do it after a vote. Foundational position of Wistrom, I mean. In the case of the pyramid scheme, for example, it threatened Wistrom's foundational position and was a significant threat to the Ilsinoi's power base itself. They acted at that point. Outside of that, you do what any good clandestine organization does. Gather the information, sit on it, keep anybody from doing too much damage, but otherwise let them do whatever the fuck they want. Because that way you're not a threat, but you're still in a position to change the situation. Evan says Trey gave the letter to Elena after this. Yes. Also, didn't he want her to read it even later? I read the letter as Trey trying to get Wistrom on his side against Octilios. And Rosie has something to say.
Okay, trying to remember what I was saying as I was typing. I actually agree. I personally go further with the slight crack theory that Ulisnoy didn't have those wards set up at all. He just manually made an explosion when they were dropping Ghazi down. For some reason,
That's
he
exactly what
felt
I
like
thought.
is that, and also that on one hand, I do think the grow might be the crass, and you're right. On the other hand, it could totally be also a distraction that he also realized, Gallet realized that it might blow Trey's cover, and so he blew up a random seagull, and she is just a normal girl. I think that's also entirely possible. But I really do think that I don't know why Gallet felt like this was doomed to fail and he needed to make it harder or do something else. I'm really not sure why. Maybe it was that they weren't planning to evolve Ghazi, and Gallet was like, this is going to go bad, kid, go get Ghazi. But
Yeah,
I
that's what I thought.
I don't know why. I want to know Gilly's plan. I definitely think that that is one of the pieces that we haven't seen. Ulisnoy is going to do something with this, and I don't know what it is.
Well, to redirect on that, my personal opinion was that the Ilsinoi were watching and they were looking at them doing something incredibly stupid that would, as he says, you only get one shot. So he gave them a lifeline, blew it up, and told them, go home, kid, and plan better, and then left it at that. Because that's the way it is. Kel says they literally set up additional precautions to stay ahead, but now I doubt myself. We're gonna go Discanter, then Kermit, then Mr. Wiggles, and Kylera says, and the bit with the Aelin Damas General. I don't know what the fuck that means. What are you talking about, Kylera? We'll let Kylera clear that up. Go ahead, Discanter.
Okay, so I agree with the things about the Ulsanoi knowing. I think, as you said, their information gathering. They've had one significant oddity in Amaris, which is Trey coming to talk to her really frequently recently. So they have a reason to. They would have a reason to investigate him pretty significantly if they did have complicated traps set up. There's no way they wouldn't have also the ability to go investigate and figure out what happened, particularly if they have an obvious target. So I'm on board with them knowing what's happening. I don't necessarily know what their scheme is, but I feel like there's very high probability that they know it's Trey and are planning something around that.
Kermit? You have something to say
I
about...
just wanted to jump onto something that you were saying before about how the Elsinoi know. They almost certainly have closed-circuit camera surveillance or the equivalent of that.
That's what I was saying. Like, nobody,
Yeah.
everybody in the stream chat was going like, "Oshi, what the fuck are you talking? They might know. Are you? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, not only that, but they've probably been watching, everyone who comes in to see the high security prisoner. I'm sure they have like every conversation that Trey has ever had with Amaris recorded, and it's suspicious in and of itself that Amaris would decide to, actually talk to Trey and like let him feed her and things.
There's so many things
it's,
that anybody with
it's massively screamingly obvious to someone whose job it is to pay attention to that sort of thing that something's up.
All right. Kylera finally responded to my question about what the Aelin Damas General bit was. She's referring to when the Ilsana interfered with the Aelin Damas General to fuck up with the blockade and cause chaos. The Ulsanoi don't always stand aside if they see a chance to cause chaos, and they have interfered in other wars before. That's true. What's that Latin saying? Like "che bono" or something? Who does it benefit? Keep that in mind. Mr. Wiggles, you're up.
So I was one of the ones who was against them, like absolutely knowing, and my point is mostly that they definitely, absolutely, strongly suspect it was Trey who set this up and who was trying to do this, but they don't know 100%, and they can't convince the other factions that Trey is the one who did it. And my thought process is basically, if they knew, and Galley basically told Trey to his face, if they knew, he would only get one shot. And he took that one shot, but he failed already. And so if they could convince the others that it was Trey, they would do it. And they would get Trey, in prison or whatever. They would kick him out of Wistrom. I don't know what the heck they would do with him. But they wouldn't let him keep trying. And this is all under the assumption that Ulsanoi actually wants Amaris under lock and key. If they don't want her under lock and key, and there's like some five-head plot going on that I don't understand, then yeah, they could have been giving him like a signal to, take it a little easy. But with them setting up the traps around that balcony already, that just tells me that they do want Amaris to be imprisoned, and they want it to stay that way.
Rosie, we're gonna let you speak. Just let me wrap up Kel's last comment. Maybe the Ilsanoi will also take advantage of the chaos to move Earthers. If anyone would have plans for that sort of thing, it would be them. Liscor is basically Ilsanoi faction territory, even without the inn being open. Go ahead, Rosie, and then we'll wrap up for the day.
That's perfect, because I was actually going to respond to that and say I completely agree. I think, we've talked about how a heist plan every time has a snack. Something happens, something fails. Well, we already saw this first one fail, and then Ghazi's clearly going to go and do it again. And I think the problem that's going to happen is that the Illinois, part of the reason they made it fail and they're making it harder and trying to distract and put as many like mages on Amaris as possible, remember they suggested 12 mages, is because they're going to use it as a chance to, like Kel said, yeet away the Earthers. And I think that's actually going to be part of the problem, is the Earthers maybe potentially having their own plan from Trey helping them, and the Ulisnoi trying to cause chaos and steal the Earthers away. And like that's going to be just like many plans going awry at the same time, and that is really what's going to mess up the Amaris rescue. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think Ulisnoi is making a snatch and grab move.
Okay. Evan, you had a question. You can just type it out for me, and I'll if just type it out for me really quickly. In the meantime, I'll do a quick conclusion. Hey, if you're listening to this, we do this twice a week, sometimes more. We're adding more topics, looking for more hosts, folks who want to, chatter and talk and build connections with each other. You're always welcome to contact the moderators or myself or Assyria and just propose something, and we'll help you set up a discussion, and everybody will come and we'll chatter about it. Pirate, if you're listening, I'm supposed to compliment you on this chapter. You did the chapter. Yay.
My God, Oshi.
What? They made me read it. I read it. Was that not enough? We at the end of the fucking thing, they were like, "You go read it for content or whatever," and I did. So there you go.
As I said in the general chat, because I didn't feel like it needed to be read for Pirate to hear. Now I kind of feel like it does. That Oshi's definitely feeling better. The sass has returned in force.
Wow, whatever. Look, I was nice the whole fucking time. I didn't say a single word.
And the sarcasm.
I was nice. Okay, we're moving on. I did this even though I didn't want to. Evan's question. The question is, do the people think Ulsanoi know about Ghazi? I think we'll discuss that afterwards because it flows out from your opinion on what the Ilsinoi could know at all, and that's pure speculation at this point, and it's not seriously any commentary on the chapter. So on that note, we're going to end the recording for today. Hope you guys will come back next time. Anybody who's listening, come join us. Come be part of Hive Mind. And Pirate, if you're listening, thanks. Yeah, that was enough.